Welcome to the Anatomy of a Strategy podcast. This is Carlos Pacheco.
And I am Tara Hunt.
Welcome to the show. Today we're going to have a very special guest in our show. Her name is Cindy Gallop. If you do not know who that person is, I think I had met Tara. I think you literally talked about Cindy the day we met.
Yeah, so I met Cindy years ago after I posted a video, I think, on YouTube about being 37 and, I don't know, talking about how I was feeling, that I had lost my youth or something. I can't remember. It was this long, rambly YouTube video. She reached out to me with a message that anytime you need to talk. And I looked at the email and I was like, that's Cindy Gallop. I just finished watching her on stage at TED not long ago. She kicks ass. She's reaching out to me. And so I, of course, responded and said, oh my God, I'd love to talk. I think we got on a Skype and then visited her many times in New York at her old black apartment, which was amazing. And she was super supportive for the early days of the startup that we were working on at the time, which was Biosphere. And then she was, of course, launching MakeLoveNotPorn.
Yes.
Which she'll talk about.
We'll talk about what she's doing, what she's done, and also the advertising industry.
Sex tech
and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's get going. Cindy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thrilled to be here.
For those of you who may not know Cindy, which I'm sure that there are very few people left in the world with that distinction, please do tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Cindy Gallop. I'm the founder and CEO of MakeLoveNotPorn. And we are pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. We're the world's first and only social sex video sharing platform. Essentially, what we're doing is we're socializing sex, making it easier to talk about. We are what Facebook would be if Facebook allowed you to socially, sexually self-express, which it obviously doesn't, in order to promote good sexual values and good sexual behavior. We call ourselves the social sex revolution. The revolutionary part is not the sex, it's the social.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we'll definitely dive into that topic a little bit more later because I think what you're doing is amazing and fascinating.
Thank you.
But before Make Love Not Porn, of course, the various other world-changing projects that you've worked on, there have been quite a few, you were on the dark side. You spent
my God.
many
It
years.
is so sad that you call it that. And actually, that is one of the things that I'm out to change.
Okay, good. Well, you spent many years on agency side, working in agencies, working your way up agencies, firms, right? So can you talk a little bit about that history, where you were, to what you did with those agencies?
I actually started my career in theatre. In fact, I went to Oxford where I read English literature and I fell madly in love with theatre at Oxford and became a theatre marketing and publicity officer at various theatres in the UK. And I did that because I was passionate about theatre. But after a few years doing that job, I got completely fed up of working 24/7 and being paid chicken feed, which is what happens in theatre. Right. And at the time, I was the marketing officer at the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool. And part of my job promoting the theatre was to give talks about it. So I gave a talk to a group of women in Liverpool. And after the talk, one of them came up to me and said, "Young lady, you could sell a fridge to an Eskimo." And I thought, that is the universe telling me something. It's time to sell out the establishment and go into advertising. So I did. So I started my career in London in 1985. I worked for a very big agency that now no longer exists called Ted Bates. I then moved to J. Walter Thompson, then to an agency called Gold Greenleaf's Trot, GGT, which also sadly no longer exists. And then in 1989, I fetched up at Bartle Bogle Hegarty, BBH. and proceeded to spend the next 16 years of my career there. I worked for BBH in London, running large global pieces of business like Coca-Cola, Ray-Ban, Polaroid. I moved to Singapore in 1996 to help start up and run BBH Asia Pacific. And the reason I'm based here in New York now is because I moved here in 98 to start up BBH New York, which began as me in a room with a phone, starting an ad agency in the world's toughest advertising marketplace. So that was a lively ride. And I ran that agency until I left it in 2005. And the reason I left was because I essentially had my very own personal midlife crisis. In 2005, I turned 45, and I'd always thought of 45 as kind of a midlife point. Obviously, by the way, in the happy assumption one lives to be 90, fingers crossed. But in a couple of years in the run-up to my 45th birthday, I'd thought, on one's 45th birthday is the moment when you should pause, take stock, reflect and review. Where have I been? Where am I going? So on February 1, 2005, I duly did that. And that was the point at which I went, oh my God, I've just worked 16 years for the same advertising agency. And, the time had flown by. I'd worked for BBH in all these places and, loved them to death. Absolutely amazing agency. But that was the point at which I went, oh my God, maybe it's time to do something else. And then the issue was I hadn't the faintest idea what. So vast amounts of thought and angsting ensued. And eventually I went, if I want to review every possible option open to me for what is effectively the second half of my life, maybe the best thing to do is to put myself on the market very publicly and go, okay, guys, here I am. What do you got? And see what comes. And so I took a massive leap into the unknown. I resigned as chairman of BBH New York in the summer of 2005 without a job to go to. And it was the best bloody thing I ever did in my life, because I am now evangelical about working for yourself, which is what I've been doing ever since. So that's my past advertising career. And by the way, I still do a lot of work in the industry. So, I work as a consultant and a public speaker, which is how I support myself alongside being an entrepreneur. I am one of 3 campaign review committee heads at the Ad Council, the organization that brokers public service announcement campaigns between clients and the agencies who devote pro bono time to doing them. I do things like this year, I was one of the 3 judges for Ad Age's Creativity Awards. And so I continue to do a lot of work in the industry, and I continue to do everything I can to help the industry I love change itself for the better.
Yeah. So you said it was like this transformation that you had between, working for somebody for many years and then, working for yourself, and you've become this big advocate for entrepreneurship. That, you must have always had that sort of, what they're calling now the growth mindset of the entrepreneur deep within your soul, or at least as part of your driving force anyway, because as Carlos is finding out, the transition to entrepreneurship is very stark from working for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, well, you did sort of like go off and open branches across the world, right? So you obviously have to have that entrepreneurial mindset.
But do you know, guys, the interesting thing is, I mean, first of all, everything in my life and career has always happened by accident. Nothing's been planned, including my startups. And, I'm occasionally asked in interviews, if I have any regrets. And actually, I regret nothing about my career. But, if I had to pick something, I do wish I'd started working for myself a whole lot sooner, because I'm 59 and, my generation was not encouraged to be an entrepreneur, to start your own business. It was very much, you go to university, you get a good degree, you get a job. The one thing I wish is that there had been in the environment around me, more of a consciousness and an encouragement to actually strike out on my own a lot sooner. So it may well be that, there were qualities within me that as and when I did that, I was able to leverage, but I certainly did not have that mindset. And actually, interestingly, what you point out is, I was starting agencies for other people. I would be a damn sight richer right now if I'd started them for myself.
Yeah, that's very, very, very true. I'm interested actually how, what year was it that you brought BBH to New York?
21 years ago, 1998.
1998. I'm interested in how you build agency in that competitive market. The whole Madison Avenue, already pretty established, entrenched. You're coming in from overseas to, with your as you said, a telephone on your desk. Like, how do you build the giant that it became?
Well, I would say, Tara, that the first principle is you have to really not think too hard about what you're doing. And the reason I say that is because, I moved to New York in September 98 and, sat in a room at the Tribeca Film Center that we'd rented. And I think it was, that month, it would have been actually in November of that year. So BBH at the time was 49% owned by Leo Burnett. And I got a call from somebody at Leo Burnett saying, tonight is the big annual Ad Council public service gala. And the Ad Council does this every year, that they give an award to a prominent figure in the industry who's done a lot for public service. And it's a huge gala and every single agency attends. And so Leo Burnett obviously had, a few dropouts on their tables. And so they were ringing around the poor relations, the agencies that they had going, hey, we've got a couple of seats free tonight. Do you want to come? So I'm thinking, free food and drink, you bet.
Right.
So I said, sure. So that's how I found myself in, the ballroom at the Waldorf, looking around me at this gigantic spread of people and tables that had been taken by every agency in the US. So I remember sitting there, looking around at McCann, Y&R, JWT, Gray, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, if I stop to think about what I'm here to do, which is to build, a whole new advertising agency brand here in the US, if I stop to think about that, I will just want to go home, crawl into bed, pull the covers up over my head and never come out again. And so I went, okay, I need to just not think about it. Because sitting in that ballroom with this glittering gala around me and all of these tables and all these people from these hugely established agencies, the task could have appeared completely insurmountable. And so I went, I'm not even going to think about the scale of the task. I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
So you just started building relationships?
I just pitched the absolute bloody hell out of us, essentially. And also, I said to my tiny team, because, that first year, 1998, our Christmas party was like 7 people around a table in a restaurant. And, I said to my tiny team, okay, here's our vision for BBH US. We're going to be the best agency in America. Now, if J. Walter Thompson or McCann Erickson could hear us say that, they'd be rolling around on the floor in hysterics, clutching their sides, laughing. But we are going to absolutely hold that very big vision, because that gives us something to judge everything we do by. Every single thing we do as a tiny startup here in New York, we're going to ask ourselves, does this take us one step closer to being the best agency in America? And so, we just decided that was what we were going to set out to do. And then I just pitched my heart out for business, learned everything I could about the American advertising industry landscape. Because also what I said to my team was, BBH began as a British agency. We're a global brand, but here in the US, we're an American agency. And that is how we're approaching this. This is not the Brits coming in, telling the US how to do things. This is us learning from America and ensuring that we grow as an American agency.
Wow. So, I'm just, because we're, as you know, we're a small agency, and it does seem like insurmountable to grow. And I think things probably in those days, I don't know, maybe I'm fooling myself into thinking that, that path seems simpler because to start an agency, there were a lot more barriers, probably not a lot fewer competitors in that way. When we look at it, I just look at this like sort of shrinking, squeezed industry that, a lot of the big agencies anyways are in trouble. A lot of mid-size agencies are stagnant, and a lot of small agencies are nipping at heels for pieces of pie, but, doing so like at the loss of their own sanity. And I don't know how involved you are or see how much, what, I guess, because you're part of the ad council, you can still kind of see into the industry, but what do you observe about what's happening and why we're here versus like the place that you were in 1998, sitting there thinking, okay, we can become the best?
I've got a very simple answer to that, Tara, and it won't be the answer you're looking for, by the way. But I have been, as you know, talking to our industry about how to redesign the business of advertising for literally decades. And in that period, especially in the last couple of years, my own thinking has moved on. And so I can tell you now what I've been saying for the past 18 months, which is that there is one single barrier to our industry transforming itself to the benefit of every single player within it. And that barrier has to be eradicated if the advertising industry is to reinvent itself for a future that could be way more productive and profitable than any era in the ad industry ever. And that is basically by solving the single biggest business issue facing our industry today, which is sexual harassment. And the reason I say that is because, as you may recall, 1.5 years ago, when the New York Times broke the Harvey Weinstein expose, I've been talking about sexual harassment publicly for years because nobody else would. And
way before me too.
Women had been writing to me for years, but nobody would ever speak up publicly about what had happened to them. And so when I saw, the New York Times Harvey Weinstein expose, where a number of very brave women, spoke up publicly on the record, I thought maybe now is the opportunity to get this to happen in our industry. And so I posted on Facebook back in October of 2017, and I just said, men and women of the advertising industry, now is the time to speak up and name names. Email me. And let's break these stories in our industry as well. Let's expose the Harvey Weinstein of our industry. And to be honest, when I posted that, I was just thinking, hopefully maybe now at last, this will start happening. I was not prepared for the avalanche of emails that resulted, that came in from all around the world. And what those emails revealed, I'd always known it was bad. I'd never known it was this bad. And so at very short notice, because I was keynoting at the 3% conference 2.5 weeks later, and at the last minute, I rewrote my talk to make the first half of it all about what had showed up in my inbox and the implications for our industry. And I stood on the stage at the 3% conference 2017, and I said, I have changed my own thinking. I've been telling our industry that the biggest business issue we face is diversity. It's not. The single biggest business issue our industry faces is sexual harassment, because sexual harassment manages women out of the industry. It derails women's careers. It crushes women's ambition. It destroys women's dreams. And when that happens, sexual harassment is keeping out of power and leadership the female leaders who would make gender equality, diversity, and inclusion happen. So we cannot have any of that if we do not have women in power and female leaders. And, what that also means is that our industry has hemorrhaged and continues to hemorrhage vast amounts of female talent, skills, and creativity. And those are the people who would innovate and disrupt and reinvent the industry for the future. I quoted a very powerful piece that Rebecca Traister wrote at the time, again, back in fall 2017. And in this piece, she said, she talked about this loss of women in every industry. She said, we will never see the news as those women might have reported it, the movies they might have made, the contributions that they would have made to every industry. And I carried on that quote myself. I said, we will never see, the amazing ads they would have created, the agencies they would have started, the ways in which they would have disrupted the industry. And so the answer to everything we're talking about in terms of reinventing our industry going forward is end sexual harassment.
Wow. I definitely agree with you, but I know that there's probably people that push back on this answer many times. So, I'm just thinking from protests that I hear about, as a woman who founded an agency myself, and as a woman who has spent her life fighting as well, obviously not as vocally and putting myself out there on that topic as you do, but definitely as a person who has pushed through a lot of those barriers. I know in my heart of hearts that we have innovative approaches. We think about, even just an example of late is a lot of the business that we do is very collaborative with other agencies that are female-headed, Oh,
yeah. And actually, Tara, that is exactly the advice that I'm giving to women. I've been speaking at the 3% conference ever since it launched. And my keynotes, as I point out every year, have followed a particular narrative structure. And so I spoke at the very first 3% conference when Kat Gordon started that, and it began in San Francisco, and it was like 100 people in a room. My opening keynote then was about the issue of the lack of gender equality in our industry, which, by the way, is enormously ironic, given that the primary target for our industry is women. We are the primary purchasers of everything, the primary influencers of purchase. So my first talk was highlighting the issue. My talk the next year was, okay, now we all know what the issue is. Here are micro actions every single one of you, women and men alike, can take every single day to change this. The third year, my talk was about the fact that change is not happening fast enough. And so here are 3 accelerants that, again, everyone can do to make change happen faster. The fourth year was change is still not happening fast enough. And here are the reasons why. Here are the specific barriers to change and how you can break them down. The fifth year was, okay, change still isn't happening fast enough. And now I'm really pissed. So women and people of color, let's stop trying to change the industry as it is. Start your own industry. And literally that year, my keynote was a list of 10 actions that everyone can take to, as I said, start your own agency on the way out of this conference. And you can do it over the coming weekend. And then, the next year it was, okay, last year I asked you all to start your own agency. Here are a number of things within our industry that you can leverage to actually build successful businesses. Now that next year was 2017. And so actually, as I said, I rewrote my talk at the last minute to make the front half of it about Me Too. And so, unfortunately, the second half of it, which is all about, here is what you can be doing to grow your businesses, got slightly subsumed because the attention went to the Me Too part of it. And then last year, 2018, my keynote was actually, and I've been doing this the last couple of years, calling out the fact that not only are women starting their own agencies, they are redesigning the industry as we know it. And so I specifically celebrated a number of female-driven ventures that are, reinventing how we work. And so I talked about We Are Rosie, which was founded by Stephanie Olson, which is essentially the ability to bring together a marketplace of amazing talent in a freelance, contract, remote, whatever context, and therefore to form teams for agencies and clients that are tailored specifically to their projects and needs at any one time. I talked about, I've been asking women for years to be Martina Sorrell. to start the female-founded holding company of the future. And so I highlighted two women who are doing just that. Carrie Kirpen of Likeable Media, who has started Likeable Ventures, which is a holding company for agencies and any company to do with our industry, founded by women, people of color, anyone considered other. And Judy Shapiro, the founder of the ad tech platform Engage Simply, who has started the Trust Web, which is a holding company specifically designed to bring together, and it has the Trust Web has very much an ad tech focus because this is Judy's background, but designed to bring together under one umbrella ad tech ventures that are built around the thing that is dramatically lacking from the ad tech world at the moment, which is trust. And so literally, women are reinventing all of this. And the really important thing that I say to those women is what I say to other entrepreneurs based on my own experience building a startup in a very challenging context. When you have a truly world-changing venture, you have to change the world to fit it, not the other way around. Do not play by everybody else's rules. Redesign the playing field.
Absolutely. And it still makes my heart kind of stop when I hear that, because in the reality of it, as an entrepreneur for the last 20 years of my life, pretty much most of the 20 years of my life, and following my dream, always sort of focus on that same core mission. I'm finally, with our company, we're seeing some sort of growth, but it's still heartbreakingly difficult. It's still, full of, we're trying to approach it on this very unique level. We're collaborative. We're railing against the full service agency and instead approaching it as, let's work with experts, mostly women, because that's who I've built as my network, diversity of women and backgrounds to bring like these smart ideas together. But, at the end of the day, like clients are still, they're seeing us as experimental. They're only signing very short contracts. They're cutting off contracts. They're not paying, they're not willing to, pay our fees. Like they'll pay, I know that they're paying other agencies, like they're working with the JWTs and the Publicists and stuff, and they're paying their fees, but they don't see our worth. It's heartbreaking because it's one thing to say, change it. It's the other thing to be in the middle of it. And I get definitely, like when Carlos came into Truly, he was like, wait a minute, you're able to sell research and strategy to clients? That never happens. That the people use that in pitches and they make up for that money lost in the media fees or whatever. And I said, no, I've been selling it. And then all of a sudden I was questioning myself because all of a sudden there were many clients that didn't want to buy it.
Right. So a couple of responses to that, Tara. First of all, have you been to the 3% conference?
I have not, and I really should go. I know I watch your talk every year and other ones.
Basically, you and Carlos need to invest in the tickets and come to the 3% conference in Chicago this November. And the reason you need to do that is the same reason that I say from the stage year after year, all around you at the 3% conference are your clients.
Right.
Okay, because in the audience at the 3% conference, and by the way, it's been growing, year on year exponentially. The 3% conference is a conference for men as much as for women, and there are a number of, male leaders in our industry who are waking up to that fact. So, I think, the last couple of years, it's been 1,200, 1,400 attendees. In fact, it moved to Chicago because it needed a much bigger venue. All around you in the audience at the 3% conference are your clients, your advocates, your recommenders, your network that will drive your business forward. You want clients who want what you have to offer. And they are the people at the 3% conference. So I say it's like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, in the same way, by the way, that I say to the industry every year, if you claim to want female and diverse talent, why am I not seeing more big agencies and recruiters showing up at the 3% conference? Because that is totally shooting fish in a barrel. So A, that is your client target marketplace right there. B, absolutely use the same principles to target clients, absolutely go after, women, people of color who will be much more receptive to women who want to do it differently, a female-founded company that wants to do it differently. And the second thing I would say is, again, because our industry is so mired in the old world order model, it is absolutely failing to accept the new reality and leverage it. So one of the agencies that I celebrated at the 3% conference last year, I thought was a genius idea, and in this case, not female founded, but male founded, because obviously within our industry, there is a real trend on the client side to moving what they used to use agencies for in-house.
Yes.
And equally, obviously, there are vast protests against this, at the American Association of National Advertisers Masters of Marketing conference last fall. There was lots of discussion and lots of, clients don't know what they're doing and this is such a bad move and blah, blah, blah. Instead, William Charnett, who's a dear friend of mine, and his co-founder, Rob, whose surname I've temporarily blanked on, but they started an agency called What Not to Do, which basically is designed to work with in-house capabilities at clients to help them get the best possible work out. And so instead of protesting this trend, they leaned into it and went, this is the way the client world is going. What will clients need in that context? We are going to design an agency specifically to help them get the best possible, strategies, creative, planning, whatever they need to do out of their in-house capabilities. And it's called What Not to Do, and you can find it at whatnottodo.works is the URL, because they said agencies are constantly telling clients what to do, and we just want to make sure that they know what not to do to be as successful as possible. And so there's a huge opportunity to really understand what clients want and need, and to empathize and to design offerings that lean into that, as opposed to what too much industry is doing, which is a rigid reliance on what it's always done, and a pushback on clients to go, no, you can't possibly do that. We're the experts, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a agency now in Toronto that's all about helping organizations build their in-house teams too. So they've leaned even further into it. But once again, these are being started by a group of young hotshot men. And I keep seeing this over and over again. And they're building these in-house teams with men in senior positions quite often. Like I see the same thing happen. And where, like to your point earlier, is where are the women going if they're not going?
That's why I go back to, all of this happens when we end sexual harassment in our industry.
Right. I guess I don't mean to be like Eeyore on this subject, but I guess I've lived it for my entire career. And then as you said, the change is happening so slow. It's frustrating that I feel like it's when I retire, and God, I can't wait to retire.
No, Tara, not at all. And by the way, another reason why I very strongly encourage you to attend the 3% conference this year is because, and again, I've said this from the stage, you do not realize how much our industry does not welcome, celebrate, champion, value, and reward female talent, skills, and creativity until you're somewhere that does.
Right.
The sheer ambience and the atmosphere at the 3% conference is all you need to end your Eeyore-ness. I promise you. Just being there in an environment where people enormously welcome and value what you have to offer as a female founder, I promise you, you will find it an absolute revelation. You will find the experience life-changing. And I say that because I recommend the 3% Conference to women all the time, and this is absolutely what they play back to me. Thank you so much for telling me I had to go, Cindy. It completely changed my thinking. It inspired me. It gave me all these ideas to transform my business going forwards. I made all these connections. I found these potential clients. I guarantee it'll make you feel so much better.
Okay, I am booking my tickets right now
and I'll see you there.
That's wonderful. And so, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I guess I always thought with the 3%, I was like, that looks like it's lovely, but I'm too busy to be able to go and have those happy, like those rah conversations and come back to it.
No, nothing happy clappy about it at all. It is hard-headed, pragmatic. We are going to enable women to do much better business and to make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. That's what it's all about.
That I like, and I can completely get behind.
Good.
We want to make enough money that we can give back. I mean, I guess that's how we think. And I feel like, I don't want to stereotype women, but I feel like that is more of a feminine perspective. It's like, I do well, and I make it easier for future generations to do well, so that they don't have to go through the same BS.
This generation right now, because again, the reason and I've been saying this for a long time, but the reason I say to women, I want you to make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money, is because when we all do that, then we can fund other women. We can support other women. We can help other women. We can donate to other women. We need to build our own financial ecosystem because the white male one is not working for us. And again, that's absolutely what, the 3% Conference is all about making happen.
Absolutely. Which I guess brings me also to sort of the sort of final round of questions that we have for you. And it's really about... so you have already faced a lot of barriers in your career. You fought for others. And now back to Make Love Not Porn. You've taken on an extra challenging mission.
Oh my God.
So
yes.
if you I was thinking, okay, so she already has a ton of barriers to face. And then you let's take this huge behemoth, because we know that violence and drugs and everything else, every criminal activity in the world and hate speech, et cetera, is allowed on Facebook. But sex, if you show a nipple, you're out of here.
I know, it's extraordinary. And actually, I'm really glad to have the chance to talk about this with you guys, because I'm putting a public call out to our industry for help here. Because, we raised funding for Make Love Not Porn last year. What is depressing is, all of the same barriers still exist for us as a sex tech startup. Every piece of business infrastructure other tech startups get to take for granted. We can't, because the small print always says no adult content. And equally, now we actually have the funds to do, paid for marketing and advertising and promotion. Nobody will accept our ads. And so I've been openly saying to my friends in the industry, anybody who, runs an advertising platform or channel, has influence with an advertising platform or channel, knows somebody who works at an advertising platform or channel, I am looking for, places and people and, advertising opportunities that understand the importance of what we're doing at Make Love Not Porn, promoting consent, good sexual values and good sexual behavior, and will actually run our ads. So it's an absolutely ridiculous barrier to have to face. And obviously, again, every barrier I face is why I'm doing what I'm doing, to try and break them down by normalizing and socializing this universal air of human experience. But I have to say, it is enormously frustrating on a daily basis.
Oh, I am absolutely sure. So how have you grown your user base with all of these these barriers
Well,
that are thrown
the
up?
answer is with extreme difficulty.
Right.
So, historically, in our bootstrapping years, our growth has been organic because we didn't have the funds and resources to do any form of paid for promotion. And it's been driven by two things: media coverage and search. The one benefit of being a controversial venture is that we get ongoing media coverage all around the world without doing any media PR or PR outreach. Search is something that we are now absolutely, looking to leverage. We're working with an SEO consultant, again, something we couldn't afford to do previously. But, we very much want to find opportunities for advertising and promotion, because we cannot scale the way we need to if we are unable to, specifically target and, do all the things that everybody else is able to do in a marketing advertising context. So I'm just, as I say, putting this call out to the industry as a whole, constantly looking for opportunities. And again, this is why I'm calling on the industry, because what we need is very, innovative, creative, lateral thinking. We need to hack the system in various ways. And who better to do that than, the creative and brilliant minds that surround us in our industry?
I have some ideas for you.
Ooh, excellent. Yes, please.
I'm not just going to rattle them off. Well, I will say on an overview, though, I just completed some deep research into the cannabis industry because we have a cannabis client that we're working with. And what was really interesting to me is how quickly cannabis has been normalized in areas where legalization, some areas where legalization isn't even through. There's decriminalization, like in New York, but in like California, for instance, it's hit and embedded itself into a very fashion, foodie, kind of just hip culture. The stoner bro of yesteryear is going by the wayside, and actually who's replacing it are these empowered young women who are very focused on wellness and very, very strongly into being badass entrepreneurs.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's really, it's interesting in the fact that the deeper I look into it, the more it's it's turned into sort of a glass of wine after work in these areas. And so watching the patterns of normalization sweep through these different networks, I could make a parallel sort of like a comparison to sex as well. And you actually do see this in these Canna Pro cultures. There's a lot of openness about sexuality and respecting women's bodies and focusing on our pleasure sometimes through cannabis, sometimes through other means, is a very egalitarian kind of focus, which I feel like your message would be super strong.
I completely concur. I've been saying for years that the three huge disruption opportunities in tech today are sex, cannabis, and the blockchain. And ironically, investors and funding are flooding into the other two more than they are the first. In fact, I wrote a piece for VoltFuss, which is a sort of drug media platform, a couple of years back, on the 6 things that cannabis and sex tech have in common that mean investors should be flocking to both. Right. Interestingly, because I absolutely have been following the cannabis industry very closely. You're absolutely right that there are tremendous parallels. Ad Age just this morning is reporting on the fact that when it comes to advertising and marketing, cannabis brands have all the same problems we do. Because actually, people totally get it. Within our industry, to your point, Tara, the lawyers and the compliance departments of, media platforms and media holding companies will not allow them to carry advertising and promotion. I think partly because, legalization is still not obviously, widespread. And so that there is still a nervousness about it that means that they actually face a lot of the inhibiting factors when it comes to promoting themselves that we do.
So here's an interesting thing that I found through the research, though, and this is why I was like wanting to toss it your way, is all these new emerging platforms run by young women who don't care about the same restrictions that the sort of traditional media platforms are up against. They are doing partnerships with cannabis, and usually female-headed cannabis companies. So Candescent, which is a topical, edible sort of company in California, I think it's women-run, does a lot of content native advertising with Goop. And Goop, for all of its ills, I guess, on health stuff, is very, like, will push the envelope a lot, and has a strong, young, empowered female audience that will
interesting.
follow them to the ends of the
that's
earth.
a good tip. We will investigate Goop in this context.
And the other one is Girl Boss.
Actually, she reached out to me some time back to ask me to be on her podcast. And that hasn't happened as yet due to scheduling, but I will re-prompt.
Yeah, and Girl Boss has actually featured quite a few women in. I was just going to look it up. There's one young woman who I came across. Her name's Zoe. They featured her in her business. She's like a founder of a sex wellness online store called. Her name's Zoe Ligon. She's in Detroit. She has a sex toy boutique online. She has an amazing.
I know of her. Yep.
Oh, great. Well, they featured her. She talked about, her whole mindful hedonism and, like how she started and where she's at, and really just very interesting. So,
that's a great reminder that that they had asked me to be on the podcast some time back, and then schedules didn't work, and it fell off the radar. So I will totally bring that one back.
Yeah. So I would just say, like, focus on like those traditional media is not going to come around fast enough, but all these new media platforms like these and then of course people like Zoe, and people that are being followed by a younger, like, empowered female audience could be your ticket into.
And actually, in that context, Tara, because I'd love your listeners to be aware of it. What is really terrific about being here in New York is that we are the biggest. We have the biggest community of female sex tech founders in the world. And so we formed this, our very own, as it were, version of a trade association, Women of Sex Tech. And so at womenofsextech.com, there is this amazing collection of fantastic female sex tech founders. And I'd love your audience to check out Women of Sex Tech, because we all face the same barriers. And what is terrific is that we're an enormously collaborative community coming together to overcome them for all of us. I totally concur that women, young and old, are really helping each other in this area as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's the, keeping us silenced and down is stopping all sorts of progress, and we can kind of go into all sorts of philosophical reasons about why that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to add a little bit of 2 cents into this podcast at this point, but
Sorry, Carlos.
No, it's all good. I always love letting the women take over.
This is why he's a good man.
Yeah. No, but I think I've seen this a lot when it comes to communities that aren't being addressed, right? You sort of have to force and create that community and build your own media ecosystem.
Absolutely right.
Because, the standard won't do it. They don't see the advantage of it. I always bring it back to communities like YouTuber communities, right? You think of like the community of people putting makeup on, right? Like just the makeup community that wasn't being really served other than, just putting ads in front of them. But, now you have like thousands, millions of people who are fans of just, watching people putting makeup on. To me, I always see these communities being created by users, by fans, and then creating an ecosystem for that industry. And I think that's where, the cannabis industry has come. We're limited in terms of the medias, but the medias are all starting to bubble up and are going to take the mind share off of the traditional ones who are just going to look at it from a surface level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and I would say that also probably cannabis and blockchain are getting all the funding because men are running a lot of the companies that are getting the funding, but we won't even go there. But and where I think women are driving the real innovation in sex tech. And so, that's where I guess, I've heard you talk about this too, is we also need to not be relying on men's money. We need to make our own and reinvest our own back into really important raising industries. So what are your biggest challenges, I think, going forward? What do you need the audience that's listening to this to help you with at this point?
Sure. Well, my biggest challenges with Make Love Not Porn are investors. So, I make this ask all the time. If anybody knows any open-minded investors, we'd love to hear about them. But also, because this is equally where we'd like to find revenue from, brand partnerships. Mm-hmm. So I've been again talking to our industry for years about the need to open up its minds about this particular area. So a few years ago, I spoke in a seminar at Cannes called Porn, Youth and Brands, the biggest socio-cultural influence on young people today that we don't talk about. And gave it to a stacked out audience at Cannes, as you can imagine. And I said to the audience, show of hands, please. How many of you here are strategic planners? So a whole forest of hands goes up. And I said, great. Keep your hand up if you are the kind of strategic planner who, when developing a strategy for the client, writing a brief for the creative department, says something like this. Our target audience is an 24-year-old young man. This is where he lives. This is what he does. This is where he likes to hang out with his friends. This is how many hours of porn he watches a week. And this is the impact it has on his relationship with his girlfriend. No hands. I said to the audience, we are doing consumers a huge disservice when we do not approach this universal area of human experience with the same focus on insights and perspectives and, research and understanding as we do every other area of consumer attitudes and behavior. And then a couple of years ago, I spoke again at Cannes on a panel called Sex, the Final Marketing Frontier. And what I said to the audience there was, people have sex in cars, especially in markets where, for socio-cultural reasons, young people live at home with their parents till they get married, which, by the way, is now the US, Canada, and the UK, given the economy generally, or where markets where premarital sex is frowned upon, or markets where whole households live together communally, so even husbands and wives have difficulty finding, privacy to be intimate. So all around the world, a huge number of people are having a huge amount of sex in a huge number of cars. Yet the automotive industry is spectacularly failing to factor this into product design and marketing.
That's true.
Even more fundamentally, people have sex in bed, but the mattress industry focuses all its R&D on sleep. People have sex on kitchen counters, but the kitchen industry is failing to take this into account. We're looking at height, width, comfort. The point being, there is a far broader business application of all of this than is simply about directly sex-related products. And so, as I said, I'm trying to open up our industry's minds around this because, we would love to partner with enlightened brands who understand how very critical what we're doing at Make Love Not Porn is to consumers everywhere. As I like to say, Make Love Not Porn operates in the single biggest market of them all. Not sex, not porn, the market of human happiness.
Yeah.
And so we have the ability, with our real world sex videos to partner with brands in all sorts of areas, not even necessarily directly sex related ones. And so, I would love to find any connections to, enlightened brands willing to talk about partnership. And then thirdly, as I said earlier, I welcome all creative ideas on how to promote ourselves in channels that will not restrict this very important message from, again, something that applies to a universal human experience.
Absolutely. Well, as they said, or as the old adage goes, sex sells. So you should be the core to every
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially, by the way, because I do make this point, Tara and Carlos, what I say to our industry is when people use that cliche, sex sells, they are usually talking about sex selling through the male lens, which is historically what's happened in our industry, which is why you see these appalling examples of objectification of women. We have not even begun to see how well sex sells through the female lens. And that's absolutely what I'm doing. And that's a whole different approach. And that's why, people should get over their fear of that, because we are talking about, creating messages and marketing that are so much more empathetic and, innovative and empowering when you basically, again, look at this universal air of human experience through the female lens.
Absolutely. That is super inspiring, and I can't wait for that world to happen. We will be seeing you at the 3% conference hopefully sooner. Definitely anything else that you need, let us know. We're also happy to see you succeed. We are members of ML.
Of course, and I'm thrilled to have you both as members.
Yeah, absolutely. We just wish we had more time in our lives to use it. That is the next frontier is for us, is finding balance. But thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Cindy.
Guys, wonderful talking to you as always. Right back from me as well. Anything I can do to help you in your business. And, can't wait to see you at 3% conference. And I love what you're doing. And trust me, Tara, don't feel Eeyore. Honestly, we are all going to get you there. Don't worry.
Thank you. And you can find Cindy just about everywhere online under Cindy Gallop. And you should follow her on every platform because the articles you share, the interviews you share, everything that you share is absolutely insightful and important for everybody to follow. And then it is ML... and p.tv.
It is indeed. Yep. Or MakeLoveNotPorn.com. You can use either URL.
Fantastic. And definitely check it out. It is not for porn. It is for everybody. Absolutely. Thank you once again, Cindy.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a colleague or somebody in the industry that you think would really love to hear about.
Social. Let us know what you think. Like us up on
your podcast player of choice.
But preferably iTunes.
No, actually, Apple Podcasts.
Oh, Apple Podcasts.